I want to welcome everyone back to the Func Nation podcast. I'm Dr. Steve Noseworthy, your host, and today my guest is Tim Katke. Now, you might recognize that name because he's the vice president of sales for Apex Energetics, who is one of the top nutraceutical companies in the functional medicine space. But what you might not know is that Tim is one of the principals who started the supplement giant Metagenics back in the day, and Tim and his family started that back in 1983. He served in many positions over the years, starting as sales rep, being transitioned into both regional and national sales manager before ending his career as vice president of sales and of strategic accounts. In 2013, 2014, and you can correct me on this, Tim, family sold Metagenics, and after a year off, Tim joined Apex Energetics as vice president of sales, and he has served in that role ever since. And I've had the pleasure of knowing you, Tim, since about 2014, and I can testify that this is a man of great integrity and great character. Tim, it's so very great to have you with me today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Noseworthy. I really appreciate those comments, and it's so nice to be with you as well.
Well, you call me Steve, please.
Okay, Steve. So one of the things is Metagenics was sold in 2009. I continued to work there until the end of 2013.
I got you.
I took a year off, and then I started with Apex in 2015. And I think my second week at Apex, I met you and all the rest of the Apex educators in January 2015. So that's kind of the history with that. So yeah, very nice to be.
I do. Listen, I do want to talk about your history with Metagenics and how you transitioned into Apex. But when I reached out to you and asked if you'd be a guest, and you sent me your bio, you said something that just tickled me to death. You said, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty close. He said that you've never created a resume because you've never applied for a job. How does that work? How does that work in today's world?
Today it's you don't usually have a career as long as I've had it in the same industry with only one or two companies. It's not usual. I have a friend that I was just talking to him, a young guy that I know, and he was saying to me, he says that doesn't happen anymore. He was working for Firestone. He got recruited by Sprouts. And now he's being recruited by Whole Foods. And there's all these different things that happen. And it's unlikely that people stay in the same business, in the same company for so many years. So I never did create a resume. And I've been, since 1980, I've been working in the field of nutritional functional medicine. So it's quite a blessing to be able to be in this space for that long. Really enjoyed my time here.
Yeah. You also said in that brief bio that you didn't go to college. What did you do? What did you do between graduating high school and then starting to work in the nutraceutical industry? And I know you didn't start with Metagenics. That's obvious.
No. Well, I had a number of different things. My family, my father was in the construction business, and he built homes for a living. And so out of college, I was a carpenter for a little while. Realized I hated that. Fortunately, some guys just love to work with their hands. It's just not me. I was worked in a number of different odd jobs until 1980, when I started to work in the nutritional business. So those 4 years after I graduated high school was a number of different things. And I remember one November nailing trusses onto the roof of a house in the cold in Wisconsin days and slamming my finger with a hammer and thinking to myself, I'm never, ever, ever going to do this again. So,
it's bad enough when you do that when it's not sub-zero temperature, right?
Yeah. So anyways, that's what happened. And we got involved in the nutritional business back in my whole family did back in the late 70s. And how that occurred, it was my oldest brother, Jeff. He had developed a liver condition, a liver disease, and he'd gotten really quite sick with that, very low energy, just didn't feel well. We were all living in Wisconsin at that time. And so he went from doctor to doctor to try to find a solution for this liver dysfunction and the lack of energy that he had. And couldn't get a real good answer. He eventually went to a world-class medical facility, and the doctors prescribed, his energy level was down because his liver's compromised. And as you well know, the liver is a storage depot for glycogen and sugars. Anyways, So his energy levels were really, really down. And the doctor prescribed hard candy. Said, buy a bag of hard candy. And when you feel like your energy is going down, suck on hard candy to get your blood sugars up. And he thought to himself, that's really can't be the solution to this condition. And he's a product of the 60s, and one of his hippie friends that was eating macrobiotic diets recommended some supplements, and he went on this liver supplement and a B complex and a number of things. And 8 weeks later, he's feeling normal again. And he thought, wow, this is just remarkable. Everybody needs to know about this. So he went and contacted the company that made those products. And long story short, he got into this business and negotiated an agreement where he could he could distribute these formulas in Southern California. And so that's how we got involved in the nutritional business. So anyways, that was a company that was called Nutridyne. And
that was
pardon me?
That was Nutridyne.
Yeah, that was Nutridyne. This is before Metagenics. And Nutridyne is a different company than the current Nutridyne. I just want to make that really clear. There's a company in Minnesota right now that's called Nutridyne. That's not who I'm referring to at all. This is a different company.
Yeah.
At any rate, Nutridyne was, we went to work for Nutridyne. We bought the distributorship. My family came out one by one. The customer service was my mom in the spare bedroom of my brother's house. The warehouse was the garage, and my dad was the shipping department, and the 4 boys were the sales department. And we went out and told our story, and we became really successful, and it went really well. And then early 1983, that company was sold. Nutridyne was sold to an investor that really didn't have the same type of commitment or belief system in this, and the products began to change. We found that they were changing, and they weren't really what we thought they were. They weren't meeting the label claim. And so my brother did a number of analytical tests on the products and sat down with the family and said, we've got a problem. These products aren't what we thought they are. We've got an option. We can either go our separate ways and find another way to make a living, because we can't morally or ethically continue to sell the products like that, or we could pool our resources and start our own company. So that was how Metagenics was started. We decided to pool our resources, start our own company. We came up with the name Metagenics. Meta in Latin means new, and genics is beginnings. So Metagenics was a new beginning for our family, and that's how we named the company.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So
very cool.
Anyways, that's how it started.
So I mean, you bring up something that's a question that I have as a practitioner, and I'm sure other practitioners have the same question. And every once in a while, you'll see in the media reports about false label claims and studies that are done where someone has taken a look to see whether or not what's in the supplement is actually on the label. How prevalent, and I'm kind of jumping because I want to come back and talk about the history and some of the challenges that you guys faced in starting Metagenics and then growing that company. But just in general, how prevalent is it that even brand name manufacturers of supplements that a lot of the docs in functional medicine are using, how often is it that the contents are not matching the label?
I think that since the new laws that came in, manufacturing laws, the GMP laws that have come in, it's less likely that you're going to find that happening than it did in the past. In the early days, it was kind of like a wild, wild west where, anything was possible. But I think right now, most of what you find on the label, you're going to find in the product. It comes down more to ingredient selection, the raw materials that you choose, and the bioactivity of those raw materials. Do they really have the effect that you're looking for? That's the critical factor. It's not the whether or not you have things on the label that you want to have. It's whether or not the ingredients that you choose have the ability to have the effect that some of the ingredients have been studied to have.
And are you talking there then about, and we're kind of getting off track, but it's all relevant and I think good information. Are you talking about standardization for bioactive molecules? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think you can look at different herbal contents or different compounds that have specific bioactive components to it, and whether they're standardized to the effect that you need them to have, or whether there's enough of those materials. Like, for instance, if you're manufacturing, let's just use berberine. Berberine's a compound that's used in helping to support patients' blood sugar aspects. You can find different grades of berberine. You can find, X amount, like an X amount of dollars per kilo berberine, or a much more expensive per kilo berberine. Yep. And depending upon the raw material you choose will depend upon the effect that you get in most cases, not in all cases, but the raw material. So you want to make sure that the ingredient selection is the proper selection, that you're going to get the best effect from the products that you manufacture.
Yeah. And I know you're probably speaking right now from your perspective as the vice president of sales of Apex. And I know you guys go, in my opinion, above and beyond in terms of like quality control, quality assurance. Was that something that was on your radar back when you guys started Metagenics, or is it something that came part of your ethos after a period of time? And it kind of sounds like the way Metagenics started, you guys were concerned about, the integrity of your products from the get-go.
Yeah, for sure. That was how it was founded. We couldn't, my brother's liver condition was completely mitigated and modified by nutrition. And this is something that, he felt like, well, everybody needs to know about this. And it's not going to work if you don't have the high quality product that's good. If you don't have what you think you have in the product. So quality was the foundation for what Metagenics was built. Quality is the foundation for how Apex operates as well. There's so many similarities to the two companies. And quality is the guiding principle. We often said at Metagenics that the doctors that we sell our products to aren't really our customers. The patients are our customers. And the patient's best interest must be met. Because if we scrimp on an ingredient or we scrimp on a manufacturing principle, the patient's not going to get the results that they're hoping for from the doctor that is prescribing it. Yeah. Similar, we have a motto at Apex: patient health comes first. When we think about our patient's health, that comes first. It comes before cost savings. It comes before any other aspect. It is the guiding principle on every decision that's made at the company. And it started way back in Metagenics. And reason I came to Apex, it was so similar in the belief systems. Yeah. My brother was sick, had that condition. That's how he got got us all into this nutritional business. The owner of Apex was similar. He had his own personal health challenge. That's how he got into it. It was a very similar story, very parallel story. Yeah. So, for someone who's practicing in the trenches, a lot of companies will have labels on their products that, or at least information on their website or in a handout that says that they follow good manufacturing principles. How is the average Func Med practitioner going to know how much money a given supplement company invest in the raw materials to have some assurance that they're getting the highest quality bioavailable product? That's a really good question, because it's very difficult to look at a capsule or look at a bottle of vitamins from a different manufacturer and understand what true quality is. There are a number of different brands that market directly to practitioners. And the perception is that those brands are superior brands. There's a lot of care that goes into the manufacturing of those products. I think the only true way you're going to really know is the people behind the decisions that go into the manufacturing of a product or a service. If the people are the decisions that are made by the people that are making those decisions, you have to trust that is probably the best way to know. Yeah. Also, there's analytical tests, there's assays that people can be provided, all different sorts of information that can be provided. But I think really understanding the belief and the principles of the people that are making the decisions is a core value that will help. Is it a case where you get what you pay for, and in other circumstances where a manufacturer might price their product as a premium product, even though the quality doesn't back that up? Yeah, there can be that circumstance. I think that generally in the professional brands, people are looking at finding the most economical way to provide high quality ingredients that are going to have an effect on patient outcomes.
Yeah.
Because if you're marketing to doctors and we're educating doctors and they understand specifically how to apply those principles into their practice and help their patients, if the products don't work, if the patient doesn't get the results, your business strategy is doomed. So you have to have the ingredients that are in your formula that's really going to have an effect on improving patient outcomes. And if they don't, doctors like you are not going to go back and use those supplements on an ongoing basis. So you have to have, cost is an issue, but you have to have quality as the guiding principle in order to get consistent, reproducible results.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally believe that. Let me circle back around to the Metagenics stuff and ask you, what were some of the major challenges that you faced, either you individually or as a family group, in launching it? And I would imagine that back in the 80s, so was it 83 that you started Metagenics, right?
Correct, yeah.
And I've been involved in functional medicine now for about 15 years. So you're going back even 20 years before I got involved. And I've seen a lot of changes in the functional medicine landscape. I kind of imagine you and your family as being this bunch of visionaries and entrepreneurs that could see things that most people couldn't. Was it a struggle for you to talk to doctors about nutrition from the perspective that you guys held, or was your knowledge and understanding of all that kind of at the same level as your marketplace being practitioners? Was there a mismatch between those, or do you feel like you guys were really ahead of the curve?
I think that we were committed to this type of medicine as, they called it back in those days, alternative medicine.
Yeah.
And then they changed it to complementary alternative medicine because they really didn't want it to be discussed as alternative medicine, because it's really not an alternative. It's a complementary way to do medicine. And then it continued to integrate into other names, integrated medicine, functional medicine, so on. So I think that, the principles we believed in strongly about this form of medicine, and then who we aligned ourselves with was really important from the science perspective. So back in the day, my brother in the 70s, even before I started, saw this speaker that was from the University of Puget Sound lecturing about nutritional compounds and the effect that it had on mitigating health concerns, a whole host of different things. And he was a young professor at University of Puget Sound with a big red beard and a big red afro, and his name is Dr. Jeffrey Bland. And Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who, if you don't know, he's well known now as the father of functional medicine. We aligned ourselves with a strategic partnership with him, and we began sponsoring educational events with him all around the country. And he was a visionary, brilliant scientist that really understood the science of nutritional medicine, and so I think that we were ahead of the curve because of our alignment with doctors like Dr. Bland. Excuse me. Yeah. So I think that was a really important strategic partnership that we had that went on through the entire length of Metagenics.
Yeah.
And I really think that, there's other doctors too that we aligned ourselves with, but he was probably the most well-known and the one that we had the longest relationship with. Yeah.
Yeah. How much changed the field of functional medicine during your tenure at Metagenics? I mean, did you see the significant and rapid changes in the industry the way that we have in the last decade or so? And what I mean by that is that, when I started teaching for you and for Apex 2008-ish, the demographics of the people attending the functional medicine seminars that we taught was radically different than what we see today, like radically different. So what did you see, say, in the first 20 years with Metagenics in that regard?
Well, in the beginning with Metagenics, it was primarily chiropractic that was involved in this nutritional medicine. There was very, very few medical doctors that were interested or had any type of natural medicine approach. So chiropractic has kind of, and some to some level, acupuncture has been the pioneers in this business. So
Right.
most of our business was with chiropractic doctors, and I think back on those times, it was quite profound. They were quite the pioneers because in the 80s, a chiropractor could specialize in chiropractic and in personal injury and workman's comp, and the insurance and chiropractic business industry was aligned really well, and doctors of chiropractic were making really great incomes doing that. But then there was a subset of doctors that really wanted to explore the natural medicine aspect and really focus more on chiropractic as it relates to other aspects of healing, including nutrition and diet and lifestyle and so on. So they were really kind of the pioneers. And that has completely changed over the years. Chiropractic still by far has more doctors that are active functional medicine practitioners, but the amount of medical doctors and the amount of internists and other specialties that have come in to this field of functional integrated medicine is just remarkable.
Yeah.
I remember I started, I had San Diego, Las Vegas, and Palm Springs was a territory that I had, and there's 2 medical doctors in that whole territory. Now there's hundreds of medical doctors that are doing this type of business. So the landscape is really modified and changed. And secondarily, the way that you integrate nutrition into a practice is dramatically changed. In the early days, there was not a lot of diagnostic work. Many of the doctors would use a muscle testing technique, applied kinesiology techniques, and that was one of the ways that they would help to determine the nutritional needs of their patients, which at the time was remarkable. It still is remarkable. It's a modality that many doctors use very successfully.
Right.
But we've also integrated into more objective measurement tools to determine whether these nutritional strategies are working. And I think that's a big shift because it's more medically accepted. Blood chemistries are used to, as you know, you teach a whole course about how to interpret blood chemistries from a nutritional perspective, how to understand patterns and so on. So I think that's a big shift that's occurred from the diagnostic aspect into where we are right now.
Yeah. And, I've seen the same thing in the last 15 years. When I first started teaching, if we had a medical doctor in a classroom or on a weekend seminar, that was unusual. Now it's unusual not to have a couple of MDs, some nurse practitioners, and some PAs. I mean, it's unusual to not. So I've seen that change as well. And the other thing, Tim, that I've seen is the sophistication of the people attending the seminars. And now that I'm thinking about it, the other major change is we're seeing a lot of, ever since I've been involved in teaching, there's always been a handful of students from any local college, whether it's chiropractic or acupuncture or naturopathic. And a lot of these docs coming out, they're actually starting their careers with a solid understanding of human function and physiology and the applications of different functional medicine strategies. And it seems to me that, it sounds a little trite to say, but like the doctor of tomorrow was going to be heads and shoulders above the doctors that are around when I got involved, maybe with the exception of the visionaries and the pioneers.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the doctors graduating, more doctors are becoming so involved in understanding more about the science of functional medicine. It's becoming a curriculum. We have, organizations like the Institute of Functional Medicine. You have a number of different organizations that do ongoing CME, continuing education trainings on this concept of medicine and so on. And I think it's really changed the landscape. I think in part it's changed the landscape because patients demand it. Patients that come to their doctor and they ask about things that they prefer not to be put on a medication. They would prefer a natural approach first. And I think that has shifted the desire possibly, or even the focus of some medical practitioners to want to become more involved and understand it. One doctor told me, he said, I give my patients options. He's an internist MD that's been involved for a while in functional medicine. And he says, patients come in and let's say a patient comes in with elevated cholesterol. I know that diet and lifestyle, I think I can probably help to improve that condition with diet, lifestyle. There's certain natural compounds I could prescribe. And then I could also prescribe a statin drug. And I give my patients options. Right? And the patient comes in and I said, well, we could do it two ways. I can give you a medication. Medication will lower your cholesterol. It's got some side effects. Insurance pays for that. That's one way that you could go. Or you could go the way I prefer, a natural way. And we could change your diet, give you some diet recommendations, some modifications to that, some natural compounds that will help. And insurance doesn't pay for that, but it doesn't have side effects, and it's a much more natural approach. Which would you prefer? And he says 8 out of 10 patients will say, yeah, I'd like to try the natural approach. It's really shifted the mentality.
Yeah, and I would say that the sophistication of healthcare consumers has changed over the years. Like, just even thinking about my own practice, the level of knowledge, and some of it has to be corrected periodically, but the amount of information available to people now as opposed to 15 years ago is dramatically different. And especially with all, big personalities, whether it's Datis Karazian or other big name people that are doing all these summits and being interviewed in different podcasts and sharing information. To me, it's had a trickle down effect to the point where if I interview a client, like a new prospect as a client, if they haven't heard about things like leaky gut, that's unusual. Whereas 10 years ago, someone would say, well, what's leaky gut? I've never heard of that. I mean, so I see changes throughout all different aspects in the industry, both in the quality of people seeking help, the profile of the doctors that are attending seminars that I and others like me teach, the sophistication of the thought process. And now we have, just like you said, in terms of testing and diagnostics, we have things available to us now that we didn't even have, say 5 to 7 years ago. So there's been a lot of rapid changes. But I'm interested, back in the days with Metagenics, what kind of conversations led up to the decision for the family to sell? And you don't have to share that if that's too private, but I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, well, I think that when we started Metagenics, we had to help people understand why we existed, what our mission, what our vision was. And, our mission was set in a principle that was to improve health and reverse chronic disease by helping people achieve their genetic potential through nutrition. And in '83, genetic potential through nutrition was not something that was widely accepted. The concept came from an article in the early 1980s. It was Dr. James Fries, and he was a professor at Stanford University in immunology. And he authored a paper on the compression of morbidity. And he talked about organ reserve. And he talked about the fact that, based on different patients have different levels of capacity or organ reserve. And it's likely based upon the choices that they make in their life, their lifestyle choices, and the article was saying is you want to grow old, stay healthy and functional all the way into your 8th or 9th decade of life. And then when you pass away, you do it quickly. So your function was good. So do whatever you can to maintain your organ reserve. Yeah. And that equated to us is, if diet and lifestyle can be effective, could that possibly be affecting the way the genes express themselves? And so we believe that, and on every bottle of Metagenics since 1983, it said genetic potential through nutrition. We believe the choices that you made had an effect on your genes. And it's still... I'm
sorry to interrupt, but like back in the 80s, that was like a revolutionary thought.
Yeah.
So what kind of background did you and your brothers have that allowed them to make those connections?
This is a paper that came out. I think we were exposed by Jeff Bland to this paper, and it was a paper that we studied very closely. And it was one of the things that was a guiding principle when we started Metagenics is that if you can take nutritional supplements and modify diet and lifestyle, it will have a positive impact on your morbidity and the quality of your life over the course of it. And the question just came up, what about our gene? Could that be changing the expression of our genes? Could that be part of it? And we believe that it was, and we just decided that was the stake in the ground that we were going to take. And genetic potential through nutrition is the guiding tagline for Metagenics products, still is today.
Yeah, and that's crazy to me to think that there are people that are so smart and tuned in that they can see so far ahead. I just a couple of days ago interviewed Ari Vigidani for the podcast, and we talked about his background, and he pointed out that he started doing his training in immunology back in the 1960s, and his mentor, whom he ended up working for in his lab, and his name is escaping me right now, but he was saying, he said, Ari, the future of immunology is immune surveillance. And we talked about the same thing, is that was a pioneering concept, like the realization or the understanding, like this guy was probably 30, if not 40 years ahead of his time, because, that statement certainly has borne out to be true. And, as you and I both know, and probably most people listening to the episode here is that, pretty much everything that happens with your health and your wellness is all phenotypic expression, right? It's all diet, lifestyle, and environmental influences over your genomic profile. And so it just blows my mind that you guys were talking about that back in the 80s. Because the 80s to me, I call the 80s like the Snackwell generation. That was the high carb, low fat day, right? And you can't get nutrition more wrong than that. And to think that there was a core group of people that were so forward thinking that they were thinking about genetic expression and nutrition in the 80s, it just blows my mind.
It's pretty interesting to think back on some of the things that happened. Like I remember being at a trade show, and we had underneath Metagenics, it said genetic potential through nutrition, and the doctor came up and just tore me, and I just was very upset. How dare you? You can't influence the genes. How dare you say that? This is such skin, and went on and on about it. Another example is I was a real good friend of mine as a chiropractor in San Diego, and he's still working today. And right next to him was a gastroenterologist that was kind of friendly and so on. He said, we were the first to come out with a high potency probiotic formula, the probiotic bacteria, Lactobacillus acidophilus, and so on. He wanted me to go and share that with this gastroenterologist, thought it was excellent. And I went in, and the GI doctor was so upset to think that we would be prescribing these billions of organisms that would be live organisms that you prescribe that would have such an effect on gut function. He thought that was crazy, that it was ridiculous, that it was, what's the word, charlatanism, and that he threw me out of his office. And now today, every yogurt you have is full of those organisms.
That's right. Yeah.
It's really quite interesting how things have progressed over the course of the years.
Well, it's always nice to eventually be vindicated, isn't it?
I'd like to go back to calling him right now, but I can't remember his name.
That's right. Find him in the phone book. So you guys, so the question was, like, at what point did you guys start thinking about it might be time for us to pass the baton and then walk away? And how hard was that, like psychologically and emotionally? It was your baby.
You know what? We developed a business, and then we had developed a business in Australia, and the business in Australia and the United States is about the same size. It was a very big business, and investors, there's many investors that are looking at this niche in the market. Nutrition has been a billion-dollar industry for a long time, but the practitioner market or the practitioner niche is something that many investors are looking at. And so we would be contacted on a regular basis, asking if we want to sell the company. And my brother Jeff was the CEO, I was the VP, and we were part of the executive committee. But we had ongoing conversations about selling it. And as we got older, thinking about wanting to develop a retirement strategy. None of the kids really wanted to be into this business. It wasn't something you'd pass down generation to generation. So what would be our retirement strategy? And so we wanted to consider that. Of course, everybody who can't work forever wanted to consider that, but we wanted to find the right investor, the right person, the right partner that would kind of carry our mission and our vision at some level. And so that was a real difficult time to try to find the right person. And we went through a whole number of different iterations of people interested in negotiations and discussions and so on. And finally, we landed on a group of people that we thought were good people that had the resources to be able to do and invest in the company to bring it to the next level.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I know that I saw a notice. So that was the initial sale. I saw a notice last year that I think it was Alticor who bought it from you guys. They were, at least there was negotiations, they were going to be bought out by another, like a private equity fund or firm. I don't know if that went through, but I just kind of wonder, even though it seemed to be your choice to do that, was it emotionally hard to walk away because you had built it up, you and your family? And, kind of sitting back in retrospect, you have concerns because you had mentioned earlier in our conversation about sometimes, companies change hands or they grow and then things start to change, like the commitment to quality and the ethics start to change. Do you look out at the Metagenics that's out there now and go, it's not the same Metagenics that we started with? And I don't want to say that because I don't want to put you in a position where you're, I don't know what your opinion is, but I don't want you to feel cornered that you have to give me an opinion. But what do you think? Like, is it the same stuff?
well, nothing stays the same. Everything changes, and I'm not. I think that when we first sold Metagenics in 2009. I continued to work there. I enjoyed working there. I think that it's not the same as, the same commitment you had when you started. You lose that legacy, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not the same. And I think that right now, Metagenics, I think that the CEO of Metagenics is awesome. I think he's a really, really good man. I think he's got, takes a lot of the historical considerations into the decisions he makes, and I think they're doing a really good job. They were sold to another private equity company. I don't know anything about that company, what's happening with them. I believe that the people that I know at Metagenics still are quality people that are really trying to do the right thing. So that's what I know about them. I think that so leave it at that.
Yeah, that's fine. So what about Apex? My experience with Apex is that they may not be the largest company out there, but I think that they've had perhaps an indelible impact on functional medicine, not only with the products and the formulas that they bring to the market, but how functional medicine education has changed, particularly under the guidance of Datis. But what do you think Apex's strong point is? What's the best thing about Apex Energetics?
Well, first of all, when I left Metagenics, I retired, and I really didn't picture myself coming back and working in this, for another company. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I've always heard of Apex when I was at Metagenics before I came to them, so when I was contacted to have a discussion about it, I was interested because I always heard about Apex. Apex's main strength is, it's a very similar strength to Metagenics. It's commitment to quality, it's commitment to education. Those two components define Apex. And I think that there's not another company that does more functional medicine education in the industry commercially than Apex does. Post-COVID, we were doing 150, 200 events, live events a year around the country. Yep. And you were speaking at many of them, teaching many of them. And so I think that one of the outstanding things about Apex is taking the concepts and putting them into usable principles that doctors can implement in their practice, really clinically relevant principles. I think sometimes we forget when you're educating doctors about the science of nutrition, it's got to be converted into clinically relevant principles that they can use in their practice and implement. And too often it's too esoteric, too scientific, not enough clinical application. Apex is the best at the clinical application, the best at putting those principles into practical use. And then similarly to how Metagenics had a guiding expert and visionary, Dr. Jeff Bland, Apex has a guiding visionary expert, Dr. Datis Karazian.
Yeah.
I think back and pinch myself to think if I have the opportunity to work with two visionary experts in the field of functional medicine, Jeff Bland and Datis Karazian. And I really think that that is another thing that makes Apex really special. I thought I knew a lot when I came to Apex. I've been in the business for a long time, but understanding Apex view on autoimmunity, on the science of immune neutral, the science of balancing Th1 and Th2, those compounds was really eye-opening to me. So I think that that's kind of a long answer to what I think, but I'm very passionate about what we do at Apex. It's an outstanding organization with great products and great people behind it. The owner of Apex is probably one of the nicest men I've ever met, big heart, and also very, very committed to quality.
Yeah, you can see that pretty much in everything that Apex does. I think it's a hallmark. Give me some insight into like the process at Apex, like from concept to market. Like when someone, whether it's Datis or someone else, comes up with an idea for a product, like how does that work behind the scenes, just in a rough sketch?
Well, probably, I'm not sure the timing because I came in 2015. I think early 2000, late 2009 or maybe 8. Dr. Karazian and Apex kind of had a partnership, and it's very similar to the process that happened at Metagenics in the sense that Dr. Karazian, I really believe, is a visionary, can see what's happening in the field of nutritional science, especially in the terms of immunity and gut and neurology. Those are areas that we do. I think we're extraordinarily, not so different, but exceptional in those areas. Yeah. And you get a concept, or they read the research, they see details about a particular compound, and then they will take that and convert it into clinical applicable concepts, and then into formulas, into testing those formulas and testing the theory behind those formulas into an actual product. So it goes from a scientific concept or theory into a concept, into actual formula, into a product, and then it's into the market.
And I'm sure that there's a range, but what's the average time frame from endpoint to endpoint?
Oh boy, it can be long. It can be really long. It can be short. It can be. So I would think from it's 12 to 18 months from concept to actual product, maybe longer, 24. There are some ingredients that come out that are just so clear cut that you can go from concept to product pretty quickly. Like a formula we came up with is a short chain fatty acid formula for the gut, which was a pretty short timeline because it was so clear the scientific evidence that short chain fatty acids have a powerful impact on the gut microbiome.
Are you talking about enterovite or?
Yeah. Enterovite, which I still think is our most underutilized formula in the whole Apex line. Yeah, it's growing pretty quickly, but it's still, I think everybody should be
is adaptocrin still the number one product?
No, adaptocrin's number 3 now, I think. Trisomal glutathione is our number 1 product.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so and the whole concept behind glutathione and the immune system and T regulatory cell function and the effect that glutathione has on it, plus the master antioxidant effect has made it in the delivery system. Yeah.
What about copycats? I mean, it seems to me that anytime there's a pioneer, especially when whatever it is that they're pioneering is accurate and true, you end up with a lot of copycats that are just riding your coattails.
Yeah.
How much of that have you seen in the industry without naming names?
Tons of it. You can't. I mean, there's so many products that came out that were same as Metagenics for less, and the same thing with Apex, same as Apex for less. Yeah. And usually it's the look at a formula that's really successful and they'll make a formula like it and say, yeah, it's just like theirs, but it's cost less money. So that's the strategy behind it. So that happens all the time. It goes with the business, it goes with.
And so, like, if it does actually cost less money, where are they saving the money? Is it the quality of the raw ingredients?
That's a good question. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, unless they're selling something at no margin, it's got to be, because bottles are bottles and all that kind of stuff. It seems to me that about the only place that you can play is that you just choose a lower pricing tier, which means you're getting lower quality.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. There is, everybody's in business to make a profit. Profits are not, it's not a four-letter word, it's something every company has to make. And so there's margins and there's a business infrastructure that's set up, and different companies have different infrastructures, different margins, and they make different ingredient selections, have different manufacturing processes. So who knows? We just go that we're the originator, and so we believe that the proof is in the pudding. You have experience, and you have many patients and many doctors that have prescribed those formulas on your side. So
yeah, where's Apex Energetics going? Like, what's next on the agenda?
We're continuing to, the whole COVID thing really interrupted our educational process. So we're getting back into our commitment. Part of our DNA, our genetic expression is education. We just do that, and we haven't been able to do that as well as we want to before. We're continuing to work with Dr. Krasian and new concepts, and there's January is going to come out with a whole new concept of dealing with different aspects of detoxification, supporting patients. There's a whole number of principles that are coming out. So there's a lot of cool things that are happening.
I'm looking forward to that.
It just continues to move forward. Yeah.
Where do you think functional medicine is going in general?
Well, that's a good question. I think that functional medicine is continuing to progress, and I think that patients are. Let me put it this way. I think that many patients are dissatisfied with the traditional therapies that they have available to them, and they're looking for alternatives. They're looking for a different way, and I think functional medicine fits that part of the market, because just the principle behind functional medicine, if rather than trying to take a medication to suppress a symptom, why not look at restoring function to eliminate the symptom? And that's the principle behind functional medicine. If you can restore function, removing obstacles, then you can have a more natural, effective way of dealing with patients' health concerns. I think there's some data that suggests there's 200,000 to 300,000 medical doctors that are in transitional medical practice, meaning that they're dissatisfied with their existing method by which they're using, the specific way that they are treating patients and looking for alternatives, and many are transitioning into functional medicine. That's just
where does that data come from, Tim?
It was something, I can't remember I can't give you the reference on it. It was something that was part of our process that we went through a few years ago. I can't give you the reference on that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, if you can dig it up, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you and I have already talked about how the demographics of people attending, specifically Apex seminars, has changed over the years, and practitioners are becoming increasingly more sophisticated, as are healthcare consumers. I tend to see the functional medicine community starting to stratify between like true experts versus your run-of-the-mill guy or gal doing nutritional medicine.
Right.
And I think that any practitioner who steps into this arena without a commitment to education and without a commitment to partnering with companies like Apex that really truly value and prize quality control, I think they're just going to fall behind the curve. Yeah. I mean, that's just my opinion. That's where I see things going.
Yeah, I One of the things that I want to comment on too, I think that we have to recognize that there's an Amazon effect in this business. And I think that's one of the things that is a challenge, because what I mean by an Amazon effect is everybody expects to get what they want next day delivered to their front door. And I think that there's many platforms now that are designed to be patient fulfillment platforms where the doctor can write a prescription like it's writing to a pharmacy. It goes to this platform and the platform delivers the product right to the patient. I think that it's imperative for the survival of this business to keep the doctor's involvement very close and not have it go to direct to consumer type of an approach with supplements. The practitioner brands are complicated and more expensive than the health food store brands in general. And doctors are trained scientifically to understand how to apply those clinically. And once you remove the doctor from that equation and try to go direct to the consumer via Amazon, you're really going to have a real negative impact on the overall effect of that. And I think that that's going to have an adverse effect. And I see some companies and some, like for instance, Pure Encapsulations was bought by Nestle a while back, and bigger companies are coming into the marketplace, and not that they're ignoring the way it's been, but they're also looking at new ways to do things. And so it's just a very interesting time because of such an interest in this field and the fact that it's becoming a very big business. There's a lot more players that are becoming interested in doing this. And I just think the whole Amazon effect is affecting everybody. And everybody expects to have it next day at their door. And it doesn't work that way all the time,
Yeah. So on that note, I'm going to ask you to offer some advice to 3 different types of docs. One would be a doc that's new in practice that wants to get into functional medicine, but they don't have a lot of experience just in practice in general. And we'll deal with these. Let me get them out and then we'll kind of go back one at a time. Another one would be an established doc who's been in practice for a while, of some kind, and wants to get into functional medicine. And then there's the doc who's been in functional medicine, but they're struggling to make it work. So what would you say to the first one? New doc, straight out of school, doesn't matter what their credential degree is. They just want to get into functional medicine. What do you advise them? What do you tell them?
I would tell them to immerse themselves in functional medicine education. I would say come to our Apex seminars. We've got a whole series of seminars that take you through a whole number of different concepts. Probably some of the best introductory seminars that you'd want to is our blood chemistry seminars, because it teaches doctors to take standard blood chemistries, look at those patterns and interpret them from a functional medicine perspective. So come to those seminars, get involved in that education and learn that. And what you do by doing that, when you come and become an expert in blood chemistry interpretation and applying nutrients to that, you differentiate yourself from so many different doctors in the market that you become in demand because of your expertise. Right. So the more expertise you have, the more in demand you'll have, the more patients will come to you. And also the more fun you're going to have. There's nothing better than learning. One of the things, over my career, over the 42 years I've been in, I've had the opportunity to learn so many things. And some people say, I've got 20 years experience, when in reality they have 1 year experience 20 different times. They've never really grown.
Yeah.
And so learning.
Wow, that's profound.
Yeah. I love that statement, because you can have 20 years experience 1 year, 1 year of experience 20 times, or 20 years of experience. And so I just love that concept. And if you're not growing, you're not learning, life isn't exciting. It's not as exciting as it could be. And so I just think that doctors have an opportunity to continually learn and get exposed to new clinical ways to help their patients. It's just an outstanding way of making a living and being excited about what you do. Yeah.
And I'm right there with you. What about someone who's been in practice for a while and wants to transition? Like you said, there's a couple 100,000 a couple of 100,000 MDs in transition from allopathic or traditional to something that's complementary. So what do you tell that?
Say it again.
What do you tell that person who wants to
Oh.
transition?
Well, I think that, there's oftentimes doctors that will get very proficient in a particular aspect of their practice, and they do it over and over and over again. If you're a doctor that's in functional medicine and you're doing well in a particular area, eventually it can get boring just to do that particular area. I think all the advice for all three categories of these doctors is continual ongoing learning. And things change so quickly. The field of nutritional knowledge, they say, doubles every X amount of years. I can't remember the quote anymore. So things change so often. Just being so much more involved in learning and continuing to grow and apply new principles into your practice whenever possible will help you not become stagnant as an existing practitioner.
Yeah.
And then one that's existing, but what was the last category you said?
Well, let me get to that, because I'm thinking that if you're willing, I might want to have you back on at some point to talk about the Apex Seminar ecosystem, and then talk about some of the strategies that you guys recommend for people in practice who want to get into it, but they're already busy doing other things. And I know that that's one of the biggest challenges. And docs and seminars ask me all the time, like, I'm so busy, I can't see how I can fit it, but it's what I really want to do, but I can't step away from what's paying the bills. And so I think there are some unique challenges. And if you're willing, I'd love to have you back on to go through all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
The last category was, what about someone who's doing functional medicine, who's struggling to make it work? Struggling either clinically, they're just not getting results that they're hoping for, or they're struggling from a business standpoint. They just kind of can't launch it or can't get it off the ground.
I think there's a number of people that are struggling from a business standpoint, and I think they actually approach their practice as kind of an apologetic approach. Like they're apologetic that it's going to cost X amount of dollars to do this. And I think that's a real mistake, because you're offering a service and that service costs a fee. And how much is your health worth? I think the people that struggle financially in functional medicine don't come with enough confidence that they just say, this is what it costs, and believe me, it will help you. I think that's an issue that many doctors run into, is not being assured and being apologetic for charging $30 for a bottle of nutrients or $50 for a bottle of nutrients that really have an effect on them. As far as them not being successful in their practice part of it, I think that's, again, education and partnering with the right practitioners to help them understand how to clinically apply those principles.
Yeah.
At Apex, we get a group of doctors together at a conference. They become kind of like a little team together, and they communicate with each other what's working, what's not working, how we implement it, what we do, and so on. So I think that an ongoing conversation with practitioners, like-minded practitioners, is a really important thing. That's why, and last, I'll just say this, that's why I think in-person education is so important. Doctors are seeing patients and they're giving constantly to their patients. They're giving everything they have to help their patients get better. They sometimes have to get together with other like-minded doctors and kind of fill their own emotional bucket.
Yeah.
And when you get together in an event, shoulder to shoulder with like-minded people learning the same things, it's exciting, and it provides a amount of purpose and excitement and so on. So I think I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent.
No, it's all relevant, because the whole point of this podcast is to start talking to industry leaders, top clinicians, researchers, directors of labs, supplement companies, because, we all live in our own little bubble, right? And you have this concept of mastermind groups that's been around for a very, very long time. And the reason why they work is because you have to expose yourself to new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things, or else you will eventually hit a rut and you hit some kind of an obstacle that you just simply can't get past. So I take what you say with, I'm listening. I'm listening to what you say. So listen, I know we're just over an hour. So final questions here. What are you most proud of in your career?
I'm proud of what we did at Metagenics. I'm proud of how we helped pave the way for functional medicine in some aspect of it. And I'm proud of all the interactions of the people that I've had, the relationships that I've had, the influence that I've had. I often say to them, I've had, maybe up to 1,000 salespeople that have worked under me at one time or another. And I've always said this to them, just think we have an opportunity in our career to educate doctors on different compounds or different aspects to help them be more effective than their patient with their patients. What better career or what better goal could you have in a job than helping people help their patients get healthy? I'm really proud of that interaction.
Yeah. And that's one thing I love about teaching is that I can only help so many people by myself, but if I can help even a dozen other docs become the best clinicians that they can be, then I help not only my patients, but I help all theirs as well. In the same vein, like what would you do differently? If you could go back at any point in your career, what would you change?
I think what I would do is I would take more advantage of the opportunities that I had at hand. I had so many opportunities, and I took advantage as many as I could at the time. But in retrospect, I could have taken more advantage of learning opportunities about learning more about business, learning more about the practice of functional medicine from a clinician standpoint, not just a salesperson standpoint. We will detail doctors on the research about a particular compound, but really don't understand how that translates into patient conversations, how it translates to patient outcomes. So I could have taken more advantage of the opportunities to learn more. And so in retrospect, I would have done that.
Yeah, I would imagine in the positions that you've held over the years and what you've been exposed to, that you've probably amassed a pretty decent knowledge of human physiology as well as the nutrients and what they do in the body. But you're right. I mean, the translation into clinical practice is not necessarily an easy one. And you can have two different docs that have the same knowledge base, but their ability to talk to clients and help them modify their behaviors can be radically different, which is eventually something else that we'll be talking about on the podcast as well, because I want to talk about the entire spectrum of functional medicine practice, which is not just about knowing physiology and knowing what tools are available to you. It's about working with real people who live in the real world with real problems and being that guide and that coach that helps them make the changes that they need to make, and doing it without driving yourself nuts and burning out, and maintaining some kind of life balance on your own.
Right.
Now, speaking of that, final question: what does Tim Katke do in his time off?
I am an avid golfer, so I love to golf. And older I get, the more difficult it becomes. But I'm still in trying to get into single digit handicap. I have a really good community that I work with and associate with, and my wife and I just love to travel. Italy is the Amalfi Coast is our favorite place in the world to be.
Nice.
And so we love to travel as much as we can and so on. So I still, to this day, just get really excited about learning, and I'm still learning every day, different aspects that I learned from Dr. Krasi and at Apex, things I learned in other aspects. So I'm just an avid learner, and I just continue to love to do that.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I read a book just simply for pleasure.
Yeah. we went to Cabo in December, and I read a book for pleasure there. So
did you? Good for you.
Sit next to the pool. Yeah, that was nice.
There you go. You're talking about life balance right there.
There you go.
Well, Tim, listen. I truly appreciate you being on over the last 7-8 years that you and I have known each other. You've become a friend and way more than just a colleague. And your time and your insights are appreciated. And please come back on and let's make that happen. And we'll talk a little bit more about other aspects of what you do and how that affects what I do.
Right. Well, great. Thank you. Be happy to do that. And thank you for what you do. You're an extraordinary doc, and I really appreciate all that you do.
Well, thank you, brother. Appreciate it very much.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Bye.